Hello, this is Dr. Grande. Today I will analyze the case of Val Kilmer. First I'll look at the background of this case, then move to my analysis. Val Edward Kilmer was born on December 31, 1959, in Los Angeles, California. His father Eugene and his mother Gladys divorced in 1968. In 1977, Val's 16-year-old brother Wesley had an epileptic seizure in a jacuzzi and drowned. After high school, Val attended the Juilliard School in New York City, where he was the youngest student accepted up to that point. His career started off with television commercials, an episode of an ABC after-school special with Michelle Pfeiffer, and a Broadway theater performance called The Slab Boys, which featured Kevin Bacon and Sean Penn. In 1984, Val's career received a boost when he had a starring role in the action comedy movie Top Secret. This film was a spoof on spy movies and had the same comedic style as the legendary 1980 film Airplane. After this, Val Kilmer continued to have success in Hollywood. Here are just a few of his movies. In 1985, Val played the lead character in a science fiction comedy titled Real Genius. In 1986, Val became a major star when he played the naval aviator Tom Iceman Kazansky alongside Tom Cruise as Maverick in the blockbuster military action movie Top Gun. In the 1991 movie The Doors, Val starred as the musician Jim Morrison. In 1993, he transformed into the gunfighter Doc Holliday in the critically acclaimed Western film Tombstone. He co-starred with Kurt Russell. In the 1995 movie Batman Forever, Val was Batman. Also in 1995, he played a bank robber in the crime drama Heat, along with Al Pacino and Robert De Niro. Val Kilmer battled man-eating lions alongside Michael Douglas in the 1996 movie The Ghost in the Darkness. In the 1997 film The Saint, Val had the leading role as a high-tech thief and master of disguise. After this, Val had trouble getting traditional studio roles because he had developed a reputation as difficult, argumentative, and combative. He continued to act, but many of his movies were not particularly well known, and they did not catch on. For example, in 2010, he appeared in the spoof of the MacGyver TV series titled MacGruber. In 2015, Val Kilmer was diagnosed with throat cancer. In 2022, he appeared in his last movie, Top Gun Maverick, where he reprised his role as Iceman and had an emotional reunion with Tom Cruise's character, Maverick. As far as his love life, Val Kilmer dated a number of women, including Cindy Crawford, Daryl Hannah, Cher, and Angelina Jolie. From 1988 to 1997, he was married to Joanne Whalley. The couple had 2 children. On April 1, 2025, Val Kilmer died at the age of 65. His cause of death was pneumonia. There were many other underlying factors that contributed, including respiratory failure and cancer on his tongue. Now moving to my analysis. Here are my thoughts on a few areas that stood out to me in this case. Item number 1. Val Kilmer believed in Christian Science. He picked up this belief system from his parents. Christian Science is based on the teachings of Mary Baker Eddy. It is sometimes confused with Scientology, but they are completely different belief systems. Scientology was based on the work of L. Ron Hubbard. I have a separate video covering his life. The core belief of Christian Science is that illness and injury are spiritual and not physical. Therefore, they can be healed through prayer and through understanding God's perfection. Unfortunately, Val Kilmer's belief in Christian Science may have contributed to his death. In 2014, Val was forced to cancel his one-man show Citizen Twain after losing his voice. At the same time, he noticed that he had a lump in his throat and he was having difficulty swallowing. Instead of going to see a physician, Val decided to wait. He leaned on his faith in Christian Science. One day in 2015, when he started vomiting blood, Val called 911 and accepted traditional and conventional treatment. This is when he was diagnosed with throat cancer. Val had 2 surgeries on his trachea, which made it very difficult for him to speak. There's no way to know for certain what would have happened if Val sought medical attention earlier. At the very least, the treatment he received probably would have been less extensive because the cancer would not have progressed as far. In all likelihood, Val would have had a much higher quality of life and lived longer. Val's religious beliefs can be attributed not only to his early experiences, but to his eccentric and bizarre personality. His challenging personality traits would be costly to Val in other ways as well, which brings me to item number 2. By the mid-1990s, major studios in Hollywood were pretty tired of Val Kilmer. They loved the money that he brought in, but he was extremely difficult to work with. He was described as argumentative, combative, and fanciful. Val had a habit of taking a camcorder on the sets and recording people over their objections. He would fight with crew members, arrive on set late, and say his lines so quietly no one could hear him. The director of Batman Forever called Val childish and impossible. The actor Marlon Brando threw Val's phone into a bush and told him that he confused the size of his salary for the size of his talent. Item number 3. Val Kilmer ran into financial problems despite his early success in Hollywood. In 2010, the IRS placed a $500,000 lien against him for unpaid taxes. A number of factors conspired against Val, which led to his financial distress. For example, after the mid-1990s, he wasn't offered big-money acting jobs anymore. The medical treatments necessary to treat the cancer were expensive. Val Kilmer mismanaged his real estate and ended up losing millions of dollars. And he dumped money into passion projects that were commercially unsuccessful, like his one-man show, Citizen Twain. Item number 4. What do I think happened in this case? This is just a theory, my opinion. Val Kilmer was creative, intelligent, impulsive, erratic, artistic, eccentric, argumentative, arrogant, confident, outgoing, whimsical, and had a sense of entitlement. In his autobiography, Val explained how magical thinking was critical in his life. He referred to his mind like a pinball machine. He used expressive language, invested in bizarre beliefs, and wrote poetry. He described himself as a ham, a rebel, and a person who always wanted to be an actor. He was drawn to the excitement of being on stage, but rejected the party lifestyle of the Hollywood elite. Let's take a look at his personality on the 5-factor model. I remember the big 5 personality traits using the acronym OCEAN: openness to experience, conscientiousness, extroversion, agreeableness, and neuroticism. Val Kilmer was extremely high in openness to experience. He thought in abstract terms, loved ideas, challenged authority, and had a deep and complex emotional life. When a person is too high in openness to experience, they can become disconnected from reality and susceptible to unusual beliefs. To some extent, acting is about becoming fully invested in something that's not real. Val Kilmer was always right on the verge of being lost in fantasy, so it was a short trip for him to be an actor. Val had low conscientiousness, which left him impulsive, disorganized, and irresponsible. This could explain why he was disruptive on movie sets. He did not think before taking action or appreciate long-term consequences of his behavior. Val was high in extroversion, which is not surprising given his interest in acting. Many actors are outgoing, talkative, assertive, and energetic. They gain their energy from being the center of attention. They thrive when being watched and admired by a large audience. The larger the group of people watching them, the better. It makes sense that being a movie star would be a primary goal for someone who is high in extroversion. Val had mid-range to low agreeableness. He could get along with people when he needed to, but he could also be antagonistic. He valued his own vision of what a film should be over collaborating with others, and did not trust people to perform well. Val felt like he always understood the best way to make a movie better. As far as neuroticism, Val was probably in the mid-range. He may have been complex and moody, but he wasn't particularly depressed or anxious, as would be seen on the high side of neuroticism. He did not demonstrate the characteristics on the low side either, like being detached from his emotions. Despite playing Iceman, Val was not cold as ice. Even though there were challenges with his personality, Val Kilmer was a brilliant actor. He was fearless, expressive, and thoughtful in his performances. Val possessed extraordinary range. Action-adventure movies, comedies, crime dramas, westerns, he could do it all. His childlike curiosity and creativity were communicated through his acting. The famous film critic Roger Ebert said that if there was an award for Most Unsung Leading Man in Val Kilmer's generation, Val should get that award. The problem for Val is that the same characteristics that permitted him to be a good actor made him a bad worker. He felt that he had the right to irritate people on movie sets. This was tolerated for a while, but eventually he was not offered any more good roles. No matter how talented an actor is, a studio can always find a replacement. There are always thousands of people lined up wanting to be a famous actor. When Val developed cancer, his unusual personality traits came back to haunt him once again. The magical and fanciful beliefs he possessed led him to the disastrous decision of delaying treatment. Val Kilmer will be remembered as a great actor who elevated his profession, but also as a troubled and lonely individual who was relentlessly pursued by his own demons. These two properties can exist in the same person at the same time, and often do, in Hollywood. Now moving to my final thoughts. I think the lesson learned in the case of Val Kilmer is how people who believe in nonsense can be entertaining and make incredible contributions to the arts. They transform eccentricity and chaos into unforgettable and lively performances. The problem is their beliefs come with a high price tag, one that is paid by the actor and by the people who depend on the actor, like investors and studios. Unrestrained creativity can sometimes be celebrated as genius and as a rare gift, but when it interferes with making money, the curtain falls and the applause fades. Those are my thoughts on the case of Val Kilmer. Thank you so much for watching. I'll talk to you soon. As I mentioned, Val Kilmer published an autobiography. He also had a documentary titled Val. When looking at the book and at the documentary, it seems clear that Val regretted his behavior on the various movie sets which got him in trouble. Like, he didn't view that behavior as acceptable later on. It wasn't like he had to stay in the sun and he moved on and he didn't care. He looked back at that time with a bit of nostalgia. He really wanted to recapture his glory days. He reminisced about his time on Top Gun, when they were making Top Gun. He reminisced about Tombstone. Like, he really did recognize that he was in a special place. He had an opportunity to be an A-list actor that many people would love to have. He didn't take it for granted later on, although at the time he did take it for granted. This is what got him in trouble, at least in part. And again, he regretted that. I find this interesting because this is a theme that comes up a lot with people who go to counseling. They look at one time in their life, like when they had a certain job or they were romantically connected to a certain person, and they think, that was the best time ever. I wish I could go back to that time. That period of 5 years or 10 years, that was 10 or 20 years ago. Like, whatever they're looking at, whatever time frame they're talking about, whatever duration they're talking about, they wish they could go back. Now, sometimes it's really unrealistic, like they want to go back to high school or something like that. That's never going to happen. Other times, it's a little more realistic, but still not really feasible in terms of making a living. Like, they might remember a job they had when they first graduated from high school or college, like an entry-level job, and they missed that. But if they went back and took that job, they would not have enough money to pay their mortgage. Other times, it's realistic, but maybe ill-advised. Like, they think back to a relationship they wish they could have again, but that relationship might have involved alcohol use or domestic violence or something. There was a reason that relationship ended, which was not necessarily the person's fault. And it wasn't necessarily bad that the relationship ended. On the occasions when somebody can kind of go back in the past and relive that dream, like capture that nostalgia again, it rarely seems to work out the way they want. They might say that they're going to give up what they do now, give up their current job, and go back and take this job that's the same one they had years ago or in the same field, thinking that it's going to bring back all those positive feelings that they now experience through nostalgia. As I mentioned, it doesn't work out that way. When they get back to that job, or that relationship or whatever it is that they're trying to recapture, they realize that sometimes it's better to move on. Sometimes moving on just has a real plus side that they didn't quite realize through the haze of nostalgia. Now, with Val Kilmer, he made a lot of money when he was in those big budget movies, in those blockbuster movies. And afterward, he had money problems. So maybe he would have been better off if he did have a chance to go back and kind of relive his former life. At the same time, though, Val accomplished something through independent films and low-budget movies and all the other stuff he was in. It wasn't like he did nothing when the big studios kicked him out. He still had a productive life. I think the cancer really made it difficult for him to do everything he wanted. But that wasn't related to him being disruptive on movie sets. The cancer was independent. So I think he had a lot going on that disrupted his career path and maybe filled him with regret. I think sometimes with famous actors, they can become so arrogant and condescending because they believe in their own greatness that they actually cheat themselves out of opportunities to continue being great. This doesn't necessarily happen a lot. A lot of studios put up with disruptive actors. But it does happen once in a while. And it happened to Val Kilmer. He was a great actor who a lot of people remember fondly. And it might be difficult to think of him as someone who failed in so many ways by his own admission, someone filled with regret. But people are complex. People do both good and bad things. They can be productive at times and not productive at other times. They can have areas of their life where they excel and areas where they don't perform well at all. Val Kilmer was a human being, and given the circumstances in his life, he did pretty well. He did pretty well financially, at least initially, and of course he became a star. In the end, Val had a lot to be proud of. Yes, there were some mistakes, but he did make his permanent mark on Hollywood in a positive way. I think it's also notable that there's this lesson about nostalgia that Val Kilmer can teach. Nostalgia is seductive and can be fascinating, but if somebody could fulfill their nostalgia, they probably wouldn't be too happy with the outcome.